Ambition is a powerful tool. Used correctly, it builds momentum in life, but used incorrectly, and your family pays the price. Joining me to talk about this is Jason, all the way from Alaska. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining me today.
I'm doing great. Ken, thank you very much for having me on, giving me the chance to interview with you.
Absolutely. Before we jump into the research questions, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. So tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your career, whatever you're comfortable sharing about your family, and of course, any current projects that you're working on.
Okay, name is Jason Pretzel. I'm 55 years old. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, and have lived here much of my life. I spent several years in Tennessee and loved living there. And I was seeking my master's degree while I was down there. Even though I loved that place and the people were beautifully friendly and it was a fun place to be, all I could think about was getting back to Alaska. I just love living up here. And being among the mountains and the ocean and going boating and doing all the things that we love to do. Lived most of my life here. I am a therapist, a mental health therapist. I've been in the profession for about 30 years and as a counselor in the capacity of counselor for about 20. I'm licensed for 15 of those. Much of my career has been working in places like a psychiatric hospital. I've worked at outpatient center in Anchorage, which was a native corporation. But for the last 8 years, I've been in private practice here in Homer, which is a smaller community. It's got about 5,000 people, and in the surrounding area, it adds up to maybe about 15,000. Got married about 20 years ago and had a kiddo 11 years ago. So we only have one child. That probably affects what we'll talk about today. Probably my age, being 55, and the fact that we had a kid late and that we only have one. Those will affect things a little bit, some of the information that I give you, but hopefully that's going to be helpful.
Before we jump into the research questions, I do want to present the thesis. Ambition will fracture your family unless it's tempered by mechanisms that protect the standard. So there's a couple terms there that I just want to cover real quick. The first one being the fracture, structural failure that can occur when career success erodes marriage, fatherhood, or integrity. The standard, this is a non-negotiable baseline that the family can always rely on, and your mechanisms help you get there. So mechanisms are repeatable systems and rules that protect the standard. Sustainability, I struggle with the term work-life balance, not because the actual thing in execution is a problem, but the way we look at it is trying to fit life into these, exact thirds or fourths or whatever it might be. So I like the idea of sustainability a little bit better, which is the ability to pursue ambition without sacrificing your marriage, fatherhood, or your integrity over time. And then integrated strength, a power and presence that's aligned across your career, home, and community. And then one more thing is the idea of seasons. When I was laid off last year, I knew that that was a season. It wouldn't last forever. And that was the conversation my wife and I always had. This is temporary. We're going to get through it. We're going to have an off ramp. What I discovered there is that we can define seasons to a certain point, and we should. If you're going through a busy season with work, then you should have an agreement with your family and a defined exit. The goal is I'm going to hit this exit. For me, it wasn't a time box. I couldn't dictate when I would find a job. But my agreement was this season will change once I do find a job. That is, in a nutshell, the Monolithic Man thesis. Three research questions for you. First one is, how does this Monolithic Man thesis fit into your life, or how does it not fit into your life?
Okay. It fits into my life very importantly. I give it a high priority because it's value driven. My wife and I share those values. A family is extremely important to us. We recognize that me being successful in my career at the same time feeds that and is part of it. So we had to figure out a way to be successful in both areas. I could see how easy it would be to just focus on career. I could make a lot more money if I just pushed a lot more in my career. It's available. I could do that. All I would need to do is invest more time but that would come at a huge price. It would come at a price of taking me away from the family. And my wife and I both decided that that is not what we want. We want a strong family life. That's what's most important to us. And, later in your life, when you're assessing, okay, did I live a good life? Am I going to say, boy, I made a lot of money. That's awesome. Or I had these wonderful relationships and invested into people. And I prefer the latter. That's what we want to emphasize. So we totally agree on that value. And this just guides us in many things.
That's awesome. Yeah, we actually met on X. We've been both active on there trying to grow our audiences. And something that you see on X all the time is this idea that at the end of your life, you're not going to regret the things you did so much as the things you didn't do. If you do pursue success at the cost of your family, I don't think you're going to regret that you made more money, but I think you would regret that you didn't spend more time with your family.
Right. In order to even do this in the first place, I think a guy has to be very driven by values and think about what those are, pick those, prioritize those, and then um, develop the habits of doing that. You have to be able to weather those decisions and say no to certain things, and that's based on a value. And if you have that very clear in your head, then that helps you to say no when you need to.
Speaking of values, what's your value system? What do you base your values on?
Well, we're a Christian family, and we base our values on that. Have a relationship with God, and that's number one. Close to that is love of others. It is primarily each other. I do view my family as my first and closest ministry. My family is so important to me. Over time, it's become very easy actually to make a lot of what would be tough decisions because of that value. Love of others, other family, community. It just kind of branches out from there. Church community, entire community, everybody.
All right. We'll jump into question number 2 for the research. What mechanisms do you use in your life to avoid the fracture?
The first thing that I do is I have a question that I apply and a standard that I apply to everything that comes to me. People will make requests of me fairly often, and if I did all of them, I would be busy around the clock and not get much sleep and not spend much time with my family. So I have a very important question that I ask, which is simply just how is this going to affect my family? Another way I've often phrased it is this going to take me away from my family? And if so, is it worth it? Why do I do it? So I'm applying that sort of standard to it. I'll do that in my own mind. Also, I include my wife in decisions. She's a great counselor to me, a great sounding board, gives me lots of wisdom. We we work closely together. And I think that's important, just that love that there's many forms of intimacy, and that's one of them is just being inclusive of each other in these kinds of things. So that's the first thing is I run it through the gauntlet of that question. And so a lot of times I'll say I'm not able to do a thing. And then when I say yes, I can do it, then I have the assurance that I've put it through that process. So it helps me to know that I'm doing the right thing. Or if it takes me away from the family for a little bit, then we have as a family decided that that's worth it and it's okay. And like you had said earlier, it's a season. It's a brief thing. It's not going to be the new norm. It's going to be an exception and I'm doing this thing. After that is the traditions. We have daily things that we do. We have things that we do every week. So we have kind of a cycle to our week. And then we have annual things that we do together. Some of the daily things that we do, we eat dinner together every day. And we often play a game, whether they be board games or card games or even just games that just have you asking questions and stir up conversation. Like there's this one called the Ungame, and it's just a simple little thing. It comes in multiple versions, and I've been amazed at how much it stirs up conversation. And then we can end up just talking for a while after, half an hour after dinner's over, just because we're enjoying our conversation. And so the family really gets to connect and enjoy each other's company, and that's been really important to me.
I have a feeling that games are going to be a big thing that I hear in this research because we do the same, probably our favorite nights of the weeks when we play games.
That says something, though, just that level of interaction that brings about, and then we're just enjoying each other and having a great time. And I just think that's so important. It affects all of us because it's enhancing that connection that we have and the strength of our bonds and gets us off screens and gets us enjoying each other. Yeah, we'll pray at every meal. I offer everybody else the opportunity to do it, but they almost always just want me to do it, and that's fine. And we do reading and prayer. So we read the Bible together probably 3 or 4 times a week, but we pray every night. And so I don't have to control everything, but I just make sure that, I prompt things. I lead by example and I lead by invitation. My wife almost always accepts the invitation. And so those are things that we do that fit into every single day. And then we have weekly traditions where every day has a certain expectation on it or a kind of like an aim or a focus. Where Monday, my wife and daughter do homeschool. Wife is actually retired now and is full-time homeschool mom. And so they fit that in every day. When a homeschool mom, she is teaching 24/7 pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. Everything's a teaching opportunity. We homeschool as well, so
Oh,
yep,
you do? Okay.
yep.
Oh, that's great. I'm sure your challenges with that, you've got more kids than I have. So she does that. And we have to emphasize, how do we allow our daughter, who is a very social person, to also build a social life? So she has um, one friend that is just, they've just been great friends for years. And so we make sure that that day is kind of the friend visit day. And she gets to spend several hours just visiting with her friend. And that's a work day for me. Of course, I work Monday through Wednesday. That's part of how I structure it is those days are 10 to 12-hour work days. That gives me the opportunity because her life is being filled with some other things. I get to just focus and not worry about it. I can focus on my work. And usually Monday is a very heavy work day for me. Same thing with Tuesday and Wednesday. On Tuesday, one of the traditions that we have is Mother Daughter Day, and they focus a lot on just interacting with one another. One of the things that I do in my work schedule is actually really important. I want you to know about. As a therapist, oftentimes what you would do is schedule a session for every hour. So you're just firing off one session after the next with pretty much no
Mm,
breaks. I
yeah.
do it that way. I do every other hour. So I actually have a significant break in between. My office, we built an office on our home property, like a cabin slash office that serves only that function. I have a space to come to, and it's on our private property, but it's separate from our home. That's where clients come, and they like that, and it's actually more confidential. They're comfortable with that, so they're not going to some parking lot in town or whatever and parking there, and people might see them. They feel much more comfortable actually just coming to my place, and then I meet. They're so I'm essentially working from home, even though it's a separate space. So I can take that hour or part of it after I've done my documentation and so forth and go spend that with my family. So throughout the workday, I'm getting visits with them and I'm getting refreshed between sessions. I actually function much better as a therapist because of that kind of balance.
Yeah. Something to that real quick is a concept, I call it stacking, where you're able to do 2 things at once. For example, for us, we spend time in the community together. We volunteer at a local church in their youth group. So I'll be there with my family most of the day Sundays, but I'm there with my family. We're having fun, we're participating in our faith, and we're having family time. So busy guys, I think sometimes you gotta stack things and do 2 things at once. That's exactly what you're doing right there.
Yep, that's a good point. I love it when we're able to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's Tuesday. Wednesday, pretty similar, and that's more of a free day for them where they have fewer things. They don't have specific obligations, but they might focus more on whatever they need to focus on that day. Educational, whether it be a trip or something like that, or just working around the house. So that's my work week, and also I've spent a year and a half writing a book. The book is actually done. It's been done for about 6 months now. When I was doing that, I would 7 days a week I would write on that book very intentionally. Rather than sacrifice family time, I sacrificed my own sleep. Right? I would get up at 6 a.m. At a time that would not impact my family at all. They would be sleeping through it. And so I did 20 hours a week writing a book for a year and a half, and it didn't impact my family very much. So that was a values priority thing where I valued my family time higher than my sleep.
I think that's a big part of being a good husband and a father is that sacrificial idea. We're living for something bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
And so if we want to do something extra, then we might have to sacrifice our time, not the family's time. And sacrificing family time is the fracture. That is where you are taking time away from them to hustle or whatever else you might be working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's very clear that's among my highest values right there. And so that wins out almost everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very, very important. Another thing I want to make sure I talk about is that on Thursday, my first day off for the week, that's daddy daughter day. So I only have one kiddo. So this part is easier for me than it would be for most folks. I devote that entire day pretty much to her and paying attention to her, and we do things together. We have fun. It's a celebratory kind of day. She also comes and does some things with me that are useful. And we make a dump run. We go fill up the
Yeah.
propane for we do some things that dad would do, but do a lot of things with her that I wouldn't normally do in my day.
That's really
We even play video games together and stuff like that. The whole thing is that we're doing it together, and I'm focused on her the whole day. And and that's a tradition that we've had for most of her life, and it's been great. Is just the connection that I have with my kiddo is awesome. I think that those connections are really important. They help us make these decisions because you see the incredible value in it. So so that's one thing, and then the other days of the week, the other days off, they have a lot more variation in them, because it's we're all together and we can decide what we're gonna do, and we do that. We talk about that. We talk about that at meals. What are we gonna do this weekend? What's our focus? Are we gonna do a home project, or are we gonna drive and go shopping because we live in such a small town. We have to drive somewhere else, or or
Target's probably quite a ways away, huh?
yeah, we don't have one of those except in Anchorage.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we live 220 miles from Anchorage.
Man,
So
it's a long
that's a little
ways.
bit of a drive through a mountain pass and all that kind of stuff, but it's a beautiful drive. Then we have Sunday, which is a big day. There's 2 services, and we do that. We get there early because my wife and I play violin and she plays flute, and this is one of those stacking things where she and I, throughout the week, we get to practice together, which also is another form of intimacy and closeness with my wife and a shared project, and it's this wonderful thing where we're both learning. We're not, neither of us are masters of our instrument. We're both learning it, but then we also get to play one of the songs with the worship crew every Sunday. So, and then my daughter also gets to make lots of social connections with friends there, learn a lot. And then we have music practice with the rest of the group after that. So that's important. And then after that, we have been blessed to be able to help out a lady who lost her husband a few years ago. And we'll go over to her house after all this is done. And we'll do things like move wood. You know, a lot of folks heat with wood here in because we're, it's semi rural Alaska and systems are different. Like I was talking about propane, people we heat with propane, but we also heat with wood and wood burning stoves. And so we go over there and visit with her and carry wood for her and just kind of take care of her a little bit and have a relationship with her. And so that's also stacking in a sense, in that it's
Oh,
great.
absolutely.
It's helping another person, and my wife and daughter play a huge role in that, and in terms of relationship and moving wood around. And so that also is I think it's great for our family, and it's a big blessing to the lady that we help out. And
But
so that's kind of how we structure the week.
I probably got 15, 20 minutes and then I gotta run to work, but, please,
Okay.
I'd love to hear your, annual
Okay.
traditions.
So as you've learned from this conversation, this is a day off for me. So I don't have a hard stop, and yeah, my family's still asleep.
Hardest part about scheduling for the Monolithic Man is that
Yeah.
monolithic men guard their schedules very carefully, so
Right.
it's been a fun
Yeah.
challenge trying to fit that in.
Yes. So let me talk about that real quick before I go to the annual traditions that we have, which also are important. I want to make sure I talk about that. But even for making our appointment today, when you had asked me about possible times, so now that you've heard about my week, you can kind of see how I would evaluate that. So I wasn't going to give daddy daughter day time unless I had to. Like
Mhm.
it's not a law. It's a guide, and so I wouldn't start with that. And Saturday morning or Saturday, I also devote very much to my wife, and we make sure we spend lots of time together. And I didn't really talk about that, but I would normally. I mean, I could be available that day too, but I preferred Friday because that day I don't have either of those things. I'm not focusing all of my attention on either of them. So I could have given at any point during the day. But morning, I figured you might be working today and that I'm certainly willing to get up early and do things like write my book. Or being in Alaska, I have to, if I'm going to do trainings, I'm often operating on Eastern time. And so sometimes I've got to get up at 4 a.m. to, go to a training or something like that. And that's just part of it. And so I'm, you know, I'm happy to do that. But I just wanted to point it out because even in little things like us scheduling our meeting today, I've fitted into the monolithic man idea, just like living it out in present moment. So let me go to some of the annual traditions that we do, which for us are very important. And they also add to the bond, they add to the memories that we share. It increases the strength of this family value that we have. So so we have things that we do. I told you about boating earlier. One of the reasons we moved to Homer is because it's on Kachemak Bay, and it's just this incredibly scenic, beautiful place to be able to have outdoor adventures. And being born and raised in Alaska, and I just absolutely love the outdoors, and it just so happens that they do too. So we keep a boat in the harbor, and we probably get out maybe 10 times every summer, something like that. So that's 10 days that we get to spend out on the water,
That's awesome.
just adventuring, enjoying each other's company, picnicking, seeing whales, seeing eagles, seeing sea otters and seals and all that kind of stuff, and fishing. It's just a lot of fun. So that one's more
It's really cool.
regular, but I call it annual because the way Alaska is that it is kind of annual. You can kind of only do that in the summer. You can boat in the winter, but this winter has been cold and the harbor is frozen in.
Ice locked.
And we are ice locked now. But then we have things like, have you ever heard of dip netting?
I have not.
It might be, I think that's fairly specific to our area, to Alaska, kind of a thing. We have these big salmon runs that come in, and a lot of folks like to stock up on some salmon. And what you do is you have this 5 foot diameter net at the end of a 20-foot pole, and you can walk that out into the water, into a river, like at the mouth of there's just a few rivers where you're allowed to do this. It's well managed, and it's thriving. There's lots of fish, and so we can go and catch fish that way. And so we go camp for a couple of days, and actually that's a different kind of adventure because you're surrounded with people. There's couple thousand people there fishing with you, and it's sort of this festive environment. Hundreds of thousands of fish come in, even millions, depending on if you're on the Kasilof River or the Kenai. And so it's kind of a big family event that we love to do every year, and we've sustained that for 10 plus years. We do I call it blueberry hunting camp. Me and my family, we will go on big camping trips, and there's places that you can go, you know, off of dirt roads and things that are just these huge scenic vistas. So we go in August and we'll stay for at least 3 or 4 days, and we bring the four wheeler and we four wheel around. We pick blueberries. We have fun. I've gone hunting a lot, and hunting has been one of the important things for me and how my dad and I connected. And so we used to go caribou hunting a lot, moose and bear. But I haven't been doing that lately, but I will get back to that. While I'm on my break from that, I'm really emphasizing things like these camping trips with my family. And my daughter's
Hunt blueberries instead of caribou. I love it.
blueberries instead of caribou. And my daughter is interested in becoming a caribou hunting buddy later, and as she gets better with the four wheeler and stuff like that. But that was such an important way for me and my dad to connect. Out of all this camping experience that we've had, and this and all sorts of different places, my daughter decided upon one that she felt was her favorite. So we make sure we go back to that place every year, and we stay there for a few nights, and we get a couple of days swimming, and we have more of like a smaller inflatable boat that you can go out and play on the water and things like that, and we just have a great time with that. So we make sure that she's influencing it,
Yeah.
and that's important, and it's that also speaks to her of how important she is to us, and things like that. Where we can, we invite her to participate in some of the decision making, and so she knows that she matters, that we will set aside time for her, and that's, I think, super important. We also go to the state fair, and we'll spend days there. That's a big adventure. That's up in Palmer, so we have to drive about 260 miles to that, and we'll camp there, and we'll meet friends there. That's one reason my daughter loves it so much. We'll go see the rodeo. Alaska rodeo is it's interesting. It's fun. Yeah, so that's kind of it. So we have traditions that are just daily, weekly, yearly, and that is what helps give me structure. The values questions, that I think that's really important, is be very very clear on what your values are, and put every decision you make through that filter.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Anything that comes to me, I put it through that filter to make sure it's something we want to do. I include my wife in the decisions whenever possible.
Like I said, this is my favorite part
Yeah,
is really seeing what other guys are doing. So
yeah.
I hope that that's what the viewers who see this have the same feeling of like, wow, I didn't think of that. That's a really good idea. And I think this is a great opportunity for me to say the monolithic man framework and theory is not red pill. It's not manosphere. It's not this domineering thing. You mentioned a couple times about how you affect decisions, but you don't force decisions. That's just being a strong leader. Is that you're a strong influencer in your home. You're open to everybody's ideas, but there is a pinnacle. There is the monolith. You are the leader, but you're open to everybody's ideas. And I think that that's a big part. This isn't manosphere. This isn't red pill. We're not dominating our families in that sense. And that's why I'm very intentional with that language. Monolithic men dominate their careers and they're present in their homes,
That's right.
actively present. That's not a passive thing. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you meant. Can I follow up on that for just a
yeah,
moment?
please.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's very worthy of emphasis too. Is that I am the leader, but I lead through invitation and example. So by doing and by inviting, and not by dominating. That's very important. And I include my wife in at least 99% of the decisions. All of them.
Yeah.
We talk about things. We communicate a lot. That's so important.
Yeah. That's huge. So seasons are really important to my framework because I went through a really tough season. And if I look at my life, I can see all kinds of seasons. Having a kid is a season. There's 9 months of pregnancy and then 18 years of raising them. That's a big season. Then there's small seasons like my layoff, or maybe you were writing your book was a couple years, or some guys have a busy work season every year. So how does this idea of seasons, making sure you have family buy-in and a defined exit, how do you feel about that?
I think the last thing you said is very important. Is is defined exit. If we're going to make an exception, no matter what the season, we never
Hmm.
abandon the values. The
Right.
values, no matter how hard it is, values stay number one, stay key. So no matter what we're facing, if it's an employment thing or if it's a thing where I have to work extra, we never disregard those values. They are our guideposts. There are times when we also make exceptions, and when we do, it's for a season, exactly like you're posing it. And I think that's actually an important coping skill as well, to recognize that this thing that we're going through is not forever. This thing that we're going through is not the new norm. And there might be times in life when that happens, later in life, when medical issues, something might force new norms on our lives, but we never forget the values. There might be modifications we can make. For example, if we're drawn away on trips to take care of a family member or something like that, we find a way maybe for family to come with us, or we
Yeah.
find some sort of compromise. We find some way to make sure that we're staying in touch. There were times when, for example, I would be gone. One of the things I used to do was be an itinerant therapist out in villages, and so it wasn't my main occupation, but it would be something that I would do for a week per month.
Yeah.
And while I was gone for that, that was before we had our daughter. But while I was gone for that, we would make sure that we were in touch every day, talk on the phone, and we would still read and pray together. Things like that. We'd still maintain those things that are important to us. If it means traveling to the lower 48 for something, that's what we call it in Alaska. So if it means traveling to the lower 48 for something, then they can come with me some of the time or all of the time.
Right.
But for any season, even if the season is longer than that and harder than that, just recognizing that it is a season, it's not forever. We're going to work our way through it,
Yeah.
and be creative in how we can maintain our habits and our connections while we're doing that. What are the sacrifices? Can I make any sacrifices that absorb this without affecting my family? Like when I was writing my book, and there'll be more, I hope. That's my plan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write more books whether they're published or not. It's just a
That's
thing I'm
awesome.
gonna do. And maybe I'll self-publish if I can't publish them traditionally. I sacrifice the sleep. I choose to sacrifice sleep rather than sacrifice family time. I'm not gonna force that on them. So, and again, that's another values based thing. I realize that many men will face more difficult challenges than I've faced, but I still think this is um, a foundation, an idea that can help anybody. Because I know many men are younger than I am. Many men need to work more hours than I work. Many men have more kids than I have. And so I wouldn't want someone to disregard these ideas because of those factors. This is the framework that I use anyway. And I would love to learn more too. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to hearing more about what you discover.
Yeah.
I bet there's lots of ideas that men have that would be helpful. But
Yeah. For sure.
this is how I do it, and so I hope that it can be helpful to other men
Yeah.
as well.
I think that the important thing here is having a plan and having a system that you're applying to your life to have the same goals. And we're going to see through the research, we're going to see a bunch of guys doing it differently. I'm really excited to see how people are doing it. But it's interesting. I have 6 kids.
Hmm.
I am working 3 jobs.
Hmm.
My wife stays at home and homeschools,
Yeah,
but you and I still have a lot of the same things. So even though our lives are totally different, we still have a lot of the same mechanisms and goals and values. And I learned some things new today. So I really do appreciate that.
yeah, great. I hope that you have heard something helpful.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we talked in the beginning about ambition, but it's not the enemy. Uncontrolled ambition is. And I think that the gap isn't character, it's the structure that you use. So I really appreciate Jason for this conversation, for being willing to talk openly and honestly about the cost, about not just the upside, but sacrifices that he's had to make. And of course, really excited about those mechanisms and how all of us can apply those in our lives. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you for having me on.